With gas prices above $4 a gallon across the nation, there has never been a better time to buy a dedicated all-electric car, assuming that you can find one. Now, of course, with the world moving toward electrification, there are no shortages of good choices out there, especially if you don't want a Tesla. Now, of course, Hyundai and Kia have been killers in the segment of internal combustion cars. However, when they introduced their all-new eGMP platform this year, a lot of journalists, including myself, were simply blown away with the entire package. So as you can see this week, I'm spending a little more time, of course, with the Kia version of this platform. This is the 2022 EV6. Now, I already had a chance to drive this car out in California a couple months ago. This week, I've got a long range or bigger battery rear wheel drive model in the GT line trim. And we're gonna do some more extensive range testing with it. We're gonna do some 0 to 60 performance. We're gonna live with it for a full week. And at the end of this video, we're gonna find out, is Kia's new EV6 truly a game changer in the segment? Stay tuned to find out. Now, when you're talking about an all-electric car, a lot of people want to know what's going on underneath the hood, because what's going on here if you don't have a motor? And this is where the EV6 does deliver a frunk. Now, at a glance, you might be thinking, well, there is no frunk underneath here. However, if you lift up this little panel, you can see there's a frunk that's roughly about 0.5 cubic feet of space. 0.5 is very small considering the Mustang Mach-E offers about 4.5 cubic feet of space. Now, my tester is a rear drive model. Now, what that means is there's no motor here in the front. You can remove this little panel right here if you'd like. You can actually see there is a good amount of space under here. Now, I'm actually surprised that for the front drive or for the rear drive model, Kia didn't give you a slightly larger frunk because you have that extra space there. But it is a nice thing that you can actually kind of remove that. You can kind of see what's underneath there. Now, let's talk a little about the motor for this vehicle, because this one here, like I said earlier, is a GT line, which means it comes standard with the bigger battery pack, a 77.4 kilowatt hour battery pack and a motor at the rear axle giving us rear wheel drive and 225 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque. That is the middle engine option, or the middle powertrain option, because the base light version of this car has a 58 kilowatt hour battery pack and only around 168 horsepower. So it's detuned. It makes the same 258 pound-feet of torque. If you guys want, for $4,700, Kia will add a motor to the front axle, which will deliver 346 horsepower and 428 pound-feet of torque. So a healthy increase of like 120 horsepower. Highly recommend that for the $4,700. Later this year, at the end of this year, Kia will launch the full-on GT, which will have an even beefed-up version of the motors with all-wheel drive as standard in the bigger battery pack. That'll deliver around 576 horsepower, which will do 0 to 60 in under 3.5 seconds. That's the one that I'm most excited to drive. It should deliver Tesla Model 3 and Model Y levels of performance and Mustang Mach-E GT performance. But again, I won't be driving that till later this year. It all goes out through a 1-speed reduction gear transmission. And this one here is the Range King, rated at 310 miles on a full charge. Of course, this one is missing a heat pump. You have to go to the all-wheel drive model, which does drop the range to 274. I'll do some range testing, but we are still in the middle of winter here in Pennsylvania. It's still not quite warm enough to do range testing in ideal climates. This car will tow a maximum of 2,300 pounds. 0 to 60 is around 6.8 seconds. We'll test that out, of course, when we get it out on the road. And as this one sits, it weighs in at just over 4,200 pounds, so it's about 400 pounds lighter versus the all-wheel drive version. Now, let me go ahead and shut the hood and show you guys the styling really quick and remind you what the Kia EV6 looks like, because this is a really attractive looking, almost futuristic looking design, and it still has its own unique look to it. In fact, you wouldn't be able to tell that this and the Hyundai Ioniq 5 share a platform just by looking at the car. You can see the front end has a version of Kia's Tiger Nose digital grille, where it's basically grille-less. You have the new Kia logo right there, which definitely is starting to grow on me. I think it's actually looking better and better every time I see it. You can see the headlights are full LEDs, where you have kind of this interesting daytime running light here, where it has an upper and a lower portion. You have the LED reflector, low and high beams there. To the outside part of the headlight, you can see there's an LED turn signal. The GT line gets its own unique front fascia with the piano black accents. There's your sensor for the radar cruise control. There's a few fake vents over here to the side, which I'm actually surprised they're not real. But overall, I much prefer the GT line versus the other trims, where they give you a little bit more black plastic look with the cladding, especially when you look at the side profile. You can see with the GT line in rear wheel drive, this vehicle Looks are deceiving because it looks very small in pictures and perhaps even in videos, but when you start looking at it in person, this wheelbase is 114 inches long, which is the same length as Kia's Telluride, their biggest SUV. Its overall length is around 184.8 inches long. This is about an inch longer versus the Hyundai Ioniq 5. It's about the same size as a compact SUV with something like a Kia Sportage. The new Kia Sportage is roughly the same size as this vehicle. Now, being the rear-wheel drive GT line, you do have these 19-inch wheels with kind of like an aero design to them. These are a little bit more aerodynamic. Obviously, you get 235/55 series tires. Remember, if you guys go for the all-wheel drive version of this trim, it'll upgrade the wheels to a 20, and you'll also get a fatter 255 width tire, which I think definitely fills out the wheel wells better. This delivers a nice, comfortable ride quality and a little bit more protection, but I personally like the bigger wheels. The GT line also gets rid of the more of the black cladding that you get on the other trims, like the wind and the light. I much prefer the body colored panels, but this also makes it kind of look more like a hatchback versus an SUV. Kia again likes to call this an SUV, but it looks more like a hatch. It only offers around 6 inches of ground clearance, so that's definitely not a lot. The GT line also gives you things like the black painted mirrors. You have these side mirror turn indicators. You have a panoramic style roof that actually opens. That's something you can't get on the Hyundai Ioniq 5. It has a full glass roof, but the roof panel doesn't open. And you can see here there's interesting touches like the black character line that goes along the side that kind of carries over and into the taillight design of this vehicle. You can see it is very low. Again, Kia calling this a crossover is a stretch for me. It's very much a hatchback in its design. You can see the rear design is probably more distinctive than the front. You have this really interesting look to the full length LED taillight with this kind of texturized silver trim or chrome, dark chrome trim along here. In the Korean market, I've seen this car offer sequential daytime running or sequential turn signals, which you sadly don't get in the American version. You can see also there's a very subtle GT line badge over here. There would be an all-wheel drive badge on the back if this car was all-wheel drive, but obviously this one, like I said earlier, is rear-wheel drive. Now the charge port door is back here. If you just touch that, it opens up electrically just like on the Ioniq 5. This car comes standard, of course, with DC fast charging, and it's also built on the 800-volt architecture, which means this will charge from 10 to 80% in as little as 18 minutes if you can find a 350 kilowatt fast charger, which you typically find those at Electrify America stations along major interstates. This car does come with the vehicle to load function, which means, and that's actually standard with the cord that the Kia gives you, which is optional on the Hyundai, which means you can plug it into this port and you can power an external household device like a fridge for tailgating, or maybe like an electric grill. That's something that you can't do on some of the competitors. I also like how the door is power operated, which is really nice. If you open up the cargo area of this vehicle, remember it's still an SUV in Kia terms. You do get a pretty good amount of space, but it's also lacking compared to the Tesla Model Y and the Mustang Mach-E. There's roughly 24 cubic feet of space back here. The nice thing is when you lift this up, there is some storage underneath here. No spare tire, just a fix-a-flat kit. There's the vehicle to load function, or vehicle to load feature, where you can plug it into the port over there, which is standard on this car, but not a mobile charger. That's something that you have to pay extra for. If you want to fold down these seats, which Kia allows you to do from the back of the vehicle, which is nice, it'll actually expand it out to a little over 50 cubic feet of space, which is good. But remember, that kind of sloping roof over here does eat into the cargo space, the maximum cargo space. So if you require more, you might want to consider looking at the competitors. So the EV6 already looks really good on the outside, but what about the interior? This is where you're going to be spending all of your time. I want to remind you guys, this is what the key fob looks like on this car. You can see this is the newest Kia key fob. It's a little bit larger because Kia added that Smart Park feature from Hyundai, where you can remotely move and forward the vehicle from the actual fob. You can also remote start the vehicle from the fob. It's a really nice looking key. Kia also offers the option to use your phone as a key, which is a really great feature. The door handles, you can see they pop in and out. This is the same door handle that you get on the Hyundai Ioniq 5. When the vehicle is locked, you can see the door handles kind of pull in and retract into the body. Not quite as cool as the lack of the door handles that you find on the Mustang Mach-E, but at least I think this is better versus the door handles that you get on the Tesla Model 3 and the Model Y. Now, opening up the door and looking at the interior, you can see my tester is the GT line, which also comes with a unique interior for the seats. You can see you kind of have like a black Alcantara seat. This is their synthetic leather with the white contrast and the white contrasting stitching. It all looks very nice. The seats are very different versus the ones you get in the Ioniq 5, which is a good thing because it, again, reminds you that this vehicle is basically a different car, even though it's the same platform. You can't really tell that they share the same platform. You can see the door panel has some interesting look to it. I love the white contrasting trim. You have the piano black plastic, maybe a little too much piano black plastic. And then you have a material here that is a soft touch injection molded plastic, but nothing really in this interior screams luxury. It's definitely futuristic and modern and slightly upscale. You can see the 14 speaker Meridian sound system has a metal speaker cover. And there's also very beautiful ambient lighting, especially when you have this vehicle at night. It's much better versus the Hyundai Ioniq 5. Now, the driver's seat you can see is adjustable in 8 different ways. There's also a 2-person memory function. These seats are also heated and ventilated on the GT line, but you lack a heated steering wheel because this is not an all-wheel drive model, so that's something to keep in mind. You have to go for all-wheel drive if you want a heated wheel. Now, getting inside, it definitely feels like the lowest step-in height for any crossover electric vehicle that I've ever tested. It feels like I'm getting into a car with only 6 inches of ground clearance. It's definitely not a lot. As I get in and shut the door has a nice solid sounding thunk. This platform is a very, very rigid platform, so that's something to notice when you first get into this vehicle. Now, to start it up, you can see the button is right here, right by the shifter, which is a really good location. Turning the vehicle on, you can see it, you can hear it has a slightly different chime. It'll say ready right there in the instrument panel when it's actually ready to drive. And then you have 2 massive 12-inch displays here. This is standard on every version of the EV6, even the base version of this car, which is definitely nice. There's also a very interesting textured look here on the dashboard, where it's also mimicked onto the center console as well. This is a soft touch injection molded plastic, more piano black plastic, hard touch plastic down here. And then the steering wheel, you can see I also really like. It's manual tilt and telescoping and offers a really big adjustability of range. And even though this is a 2-spoke wheel, I like the fact that it's also a flat bottom. Really makes the wheel look pretty futuristic with the new Kia logo. The horn sounds pretty normal, what I expect for a vehicle of this size. I also really like the paddles on the wheel, which controls the regen braking and the 1-pedal drive. You have your typical controls for your DriveWise package, your audio controls, and there's a few more controls over here. This is where your electronic parking brake is over here. Everything here feels very conventional, unlike a Tesla. You have traditional mirror controls, window controls, memory seats, you have buttons over here, and then you have buttons on your steering wheel. And then of course the infotainment system here, which has 2 12-inch displays that kind of create a curved piece of glass. It's one piece, even though they're 2 separate displays. Now, the one thing I would knock about this car, however, is the fact that Apple CarPlay and Android Auto is not wireless. It's not wireless at any price point in this trim. For some reason, Hyundai and Kia and Genesis don't do wireless CarPlay on their biggest screens. So instead, I have to plug my phone in down here from that wired connection over there, which this car still uses a USB-A charging connector. You do have a USB-C over there, but most competitors have gone to a complete all USB-C, so that's something to keep in mind. That's what the CarPlay looks like when it's full screen. It does look good, and I do think that it fills out the screen nicely. The graphics are good. The touch screen response is also solid. This is a very quick responding system, one of the best in the industry. It just needs wireless CarPlay to make it feel complete, which I don't understand. There is embedded GPS into this car, which is nice. However, for some reason, Hyundai and Kia, when you use the embedded GPS, it doesn't actually plan your route and route you to chargers. You have to manually add that. So I'm not entirely sure why Hyundai and Kia haven't done that feature. Ford does that on the Mustang Mach-E, and then of course Tesla does that with their system. There's a really cool little EV chart here, which shows you kind of how far you can travel with or without the climate control. It also changes based on the drive mode. So if I start changing the drive mode, you can see Sport will lower it, Eco will increase it. So that's all very nice. It also shows you your menu for your vehicle to load feature. The setup button over here allows you to change and customize a lot of things about the vehicle here. You can go to vehicle here, and you can also customize your active sound design, your heads-up display. Everything in here looks really good for the graphics. You can also change the cluster, the lights, the convenience. The active sound design is really interesting. I'll show you guys that later on. This is something that you don't get in the Hyundai version of this car, is the synthetic noises that it makes. If you go to sound over here, you can also adjust things for the 14-speaker Meridian sound system, which I have to say, for a 14-speaker sound system with metal speakers, I'm actually very disappointed with how it sounds. It's very lacking in bass. So my recommendation, try the sound system out. Play it with, of course, your actual music, not satellite radio, which is going to be crunchy in terms of the graphics, and really hear if it sounds okay to you. The ambient lighting in this car also is really nice. If you go to lights over here, go to ambient light. You can actually change the color, and let me tell you, at night, the interior looks beautiful. It's pretty much on par with a lot of luxury cars. My favorite is actually the dreamy purple color, but you can also change it out to like blue flight, peaceful forest, orange delight, violet cloud, refreshing sea, and then you can also do a custom color. And the cool thing is when you change the color here, you can see it actually changes the color in the lines, so it makes a direct change to the instrument panel immediately. And I think that's a really cool, nice touch. This really makes the car feel special, especially at night. So Kia did a great job there. You can see what I also like about this car are the heated and cooled seat controls, a separate button versus in the screen in the Ioniq. The one thing about this car that I don't like, however, is this panel right here. You can see right now I have it on climate. It's got dual zone climate control, but you're probably wondering, where's the volume knob to turn the volume up? Well, if you have to push this button over here and that switches the panel, you can see it actually changes the buttons, and you also get your volume knob back over here, which you probably notice it's really easy to bump this. When you bump this, it switches back automatically to climate. And again, there's so many times where I'm changing the audio and I accidentally bump that and it goes back to climate. So that's something to keep in mind. I think this panel needs work. It just didn't really need to happen, but it does look more futuristic, but just know it's gonna take a little bit of getting used to. So that's something to keep in mind. I do think the Hyundai slightly did it better over there. Over here on the center console, there is a plenty of storage space underneath here. You can see a really deep storage well for your phone, for other items. You have a floating center console over here where it has lots of piano black plastic. If I put the vehicle into reverse, you can see there's your full 360 camera with a top-down view. And I also love how you can also do a complete full perimeter scan of the car and scan around the vehicle. I think this is a great feature that the Europeans tend to offer. This is something you can't get on the competitors of this car. Which I think Kia did a great job there. Wireless phone charging pad is over here. This controls your transmission, of course, with the 1 speed. It's got a park button over there, and then you twist it to the right to go to drive, to the left to reverse, and then push the P button. Cup holders over here, a little bit more storage, and there's also more storage in here where you can see it's pretty deep down there, and it's not lined with felt or anything, but the seats are also comfortable and supportive. The GT line has slightly more aggressively bolstered seats. I hear the GT is going to have even more aggressive seats. The headrest, you can see, does come forward and back. You can also adjust up and down, which is nice. There's LED lighting in the cabin over here, and then you can see there is a sunroof here. It's not quite as big as the Ioniq 5s, but unlike the Hyundai, this sunroof does open. So if you want a traditional sunroof, this is the car and the electric car space that still offers it. So that's something to keep in mind. So overall, the interior is very nice. I also love the heads-up display with the augmented reality. I think what Kia just needs to add is a heated wheel on rear-wheel drive models and wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and that would make the interior a lot better for me. Looking at the back seat of the EV6, you can see this offers one of the largest back seats in the segment with about 39 inches of legroom back here. Now, 39 inches is a lot. It's about the same as the Mustang Mach-E, a little bit less than the Tesla Model Y. The difference, however, is the roof. Because the roof is lower versus the Ioniq 5 by about 2 inches, you do have slightly reduced headroom. In terms of the rear seat materials, you can see this is a hard touch plastic, so it's slightly downgraded, but it is still padded over here. And you still have the same kind of piano black plastic and silver trim everywhere. Now, getting inside, for somebody my height, I don't have a problem getting in. This actually doesn't require me to duck my head, but for those of you who are taller, you may have to do so. Getting back here and shutting the door, you can see I have a ton of legroom back here. You can even see some of the ambient lighting at night, even though we're in the bright daylight right now. There are 2 rear seat storage pockets. You have 2 USB-C charging ports into the actual seat back, which is nice. No heated rear seats, and you might think there are no rear seat air vents in here. However, they're here. They're on the B pillars, which is definitely nice. They're kind of out of the way over here. The seat back also reclines forward and back slightly, which is nice. You do have a little power outlet over here for if you guys want to plug in an actual household on a 3-prong outlet, which is cool. And then you can see here there's an armrest there that folds down, gives you 2 cup holders. There's LED lighting in here, which is nice. It would be nice if Kia did make the sunroof a little bit larger, but at least, again, the sunroof opens. But overall, if you actually need a back seat with decent legroom and you don't require too much headroom, the EV6 will certainly deliver on that. So when it comes to dedicated long-range, mass-produced EVs that are built off of an EV platform, both the Ioniq 5 and the EV6 for me are probably the new benchmark. And I already had a chance to drive this car about a month and a half ago when I was out in California in Healdsburg. Now that Kia has sent me this model for a week back home, I'm going to do a little bit more extensive testing in it. But I am a little bit sad because they sent me over the rear drive model, and it's about 39 degrees outside. We're still kind of in early March. It's still winter here, and this car lacks a heat pump. So the most range that I'm seeing on a full charge is 280 miles. That's with an eco eco mode with the heater turned off. That's pretty similar to the all-wheel drive Ioniq 5 that I last had, but because this is the rear drive model, I do want to test out the 0 to 60 performance. We'll go ahead and just see what I can get over here real quick. Really sluggish off the line for some reason, but once it gets going, it's quick. 0 to 60 in 6.57 seconds. I'm gonna try brake torquing it in my next run, but that's about on par. Actually, that's a little quicker than what Kia says this car will do. I believe they quoted the rear drive model at 6.8 seconds. It is about 2 seconds slower versus the all-wheel drive version, and it also doesn't have that immediacy that I really love about the all-wheel drive model. So for those of you who are looking for something with more like of a punch, you're gonna wanna go for the all-wheel drive model for an extra $4,700. The rear drive model is fine, especially if you're coming from a normal gas-powered car. This is gonna be plenty quick for most people, but I am noticing that it doesn't feel as fast as a Tesla for this price range, but that's something to kind of keep in mind. But let's go ahead and try it one more time here. I'm gonna brake torque it slightly and see if I can get a little bit of a stronger feel this time. Definitely feels a little quicker if you brake torque it. Traction control is off. There's no slippage, even though this is rear drive. 6.97 seconds on this run. So this is a little bit slightly uphill versus the other run was slightly downhill. So this is right bang on with Kia's 6.8. Average it out at 6.7 seconds. It is definitely quick enough, but it really gets me excited, of course, to drive the full GT version of this car, which will have more than double the horsepower of this vehicle. This has 225 horsepower, which is perfectly fine. This is like GTI territory, but the GT version, the full GT with dual motors, will offer almost 580 horsepower. So that gets me excited. Put my foot down here. I love the feel and the balance of this car. You know, it is a heavy vehicle, but it's also about 400 pounds lighter than the all-wheel drive model. But once you're up to speed and you put your foot down, it has that instant torque that you really appreciate. It just doesn't have as much of the shove that I was looking for. I also really like, between the Ioniq 5 and this car, I like the sound this car makes. This is the dynamic sound that I have it in right now, and we'll go ahead and we'll switch it to a slightly different sound, which I do wish that Kia gave me quicker access to the sound. That would be nice to have, although right now it's not letting me change it. I did notice this screen sometimes, like if I touch EV or I touch setup, it's not letting me go to the, there we go, now it's finally letting me do it. There's a little bit of a delay there, but go to active sound design here. I have it on dynamic. This is stylish. I kind of like the stylish sound too. The dynamic gets a little drony at times. Drony like it's an exhaust, but it can be a little annoying at times. But I like how Kia gives you the option to choose from 3 different sounds, and you can also turn it off if you don't want to hear any noise at all, versus Hyundai, they took that feature out, but that's something to keep in mind. And the fact that this is rear-wheel drive lets you let the tail step out, which is hilarious with the traction control off. But because it has that really low center of gravity, the handling of this car is really nice. There's the stylish sound again, and then there's also Cyber. Let's go ahead and try Cyber. This sounds like probably the silliest sound. It kind of sounds like George Jetson-y. But it's also the least obnoxious when you're not on the throttle. When you're off the throttle, it doesn't make any noise at all. Dynamic is kind of just always like always in the background. And then there's stylish, which I think stylish is probably a nice blend between the two. It's probably my favorite in terms of the sounds that it makes. It's the chirp from the rear tires. Foot to the floor here. So yes, this is not the fastest EV you can buy, but it is an incredibly well-rounded, really balanced feeling EV with good steering feel, really quick feeling steering feel, and you really get a sense that you're not driving a crossover in this car. It definitely feels even more like a hatch versus the Ioniq 5 because the roof line is 2 inches lower. You sit pretty low to the ground, so if you're looking for that crossover ride height, you're not going to want this. You're going to want to look at the Mustang Mach-E or the Volkswagen ID4 or Volvo XC40 Recharge or a Tesla Model Y. This feels like a really interesting blend between a Model 3 and a Model Y in terms of the feel and the presence of this car. But I'm just really impressed with how this thing handles and also how comfortable it is. Like, I'll switch it over to just a regular or the eco norm or the normal mode. This is what people are mostly going to drive it in. We'll turn the stability control back on. and just cruise along. This vehicle has excellent road manners. It feels solid, it feels premium. This model also has Kia's DriveWise package, so you have their full suite of driver assistance with highway driving assist, automatic lane changing, which all works really well. I had a chance to test this out, of course, on the highway, and Kia system works well. It's not a true hands-free system, but I imagine that'll be coming in the coming years. And you just get a sense that, you know, this feels special. That's the one thing about this car, is it feels special. It gives you great visibility from the front. The rear is a little bit small from the windows, but the side mirrors are also pretty large. The seats are also really comfortable. I like the seats in this car, but right now in the cold weather, I am missing the heated steering wheel, which is something that you get again with the all-wheel drive model. Kia packages that and the heat pump with the all-wheel drive version for an extra $4,700, and you get like an extra 100 horsepower, 120 horsepower. It seems worth it. Which, by the way, I do want to talk about the range, because in my week's worth of testing, this car is rated to get 310 miles. That's the most that you're going to see in this within this platform, about 7 more miles versus the Hyundai Ioniq 5. I suspect it's the aerodynamics that allows it to get better mileage. In my week's worth of testing, of course, in the cold, I was getting a maximum around 275 miles on a full charge. That sounds about right considering how cold it is out here. Keep that in mind. I pretty much suspect that if you're going to drive this car in warmer areas, and that's probably where a lot of you are going to buy this car, is if you live in warmer climates, you're going to go for the rear drive model. It should easily top 300 miles of range, which is good that I'm getting at least 275 or 270 in these colder conditions. It makes this car really efficient. I mean, it averages around 3.2 to 3.6 miles per kilowatt, which is better versus what I get in my Mustang Mach-E and the last Volkswagen ID4 that I tested. So very good efficiency, really insanely fast charging. I mean, I've already tested the fast charging in this vehicle. If you can find a 350 kilowatt, which they're becoming more and more popular and widespread along the interstates all across America, this will charge again in as little as 18 minutes from 10 to 80%. And that makes it one of the fastest charging EVs, especially for the price. This runs on the 800 volt architecture, remember. And also, I love the fact that you can literally stomp on the throttle and let the tail step out. That is just even more tail happy than the Mustang Mach-E, the premium that I last tested. Not mine. Mine gets really tail happy, but this is not a performance oriented model. But it has those, you know, fun to drive factors. It feels like it was designed and built for somebody who enjoys driving. And that's what I love about the EV6. You do, of course, make a sacrifice with this car. The interior is not quite as spacious. If you guys are taller, you're not going to have quite as much headroom. And I do think that in terms of tech, this car has great tech, but it's also missing wireless Apple CarPlay, which I think should be included. I don't know why Hyundai and Kia and Genesis are behind the curve there with the wireless CarPlay. That could be a deal breaker for some. And then, as I mentioned earlier in the interior scene, the audio system in this car, the 14-speaker Meridian sound system, for some reason, it's very disappointing to me and my significant other also when he tried it out. The sound system is lacking in the bass department, which it may not be a big deal for some of you. I had it cranked up, I turned the bass up, I have it playing through, of course, the CarPlay with my music, not like a satellite radio where it's kind of going to be constricted for the audio quality. And I think that other manufacturers, the Mach-E including Tesla's, they have better sound systems. So that's something to keep in mind to go for the Genesis version of this car, which should offer a Lexicon sound system versus the Meridian sound system. But overall, very impressed with the way this car drives to live with. The EV6 might be my favorite over the Ioniq 5 now, just because I do like the interior upgrades that Kia has made. Just be sure that if you're going to live in a colder climate, I strongly recommend going for the all-wheel drive model. And for those of you who are looking something even faster, the upcoming GT that's coming out later this summer could be the one to beat, and I suspect that one could be faster than a Model 3 Performance, because Kia says that car will accelerate to 60 in under 3.5 seconds. So after spending a full week with the brand new 2022 Kia EV6, now when I first drove this platform in the Ioniq 5, I actually thought I might prefer the Ioniq 5 more. There are certain elements of the Hyundai that I also think is better versus the Kia, especially when it comes to the exterior design. But after living with this car, I think Kia did this platform slightly better. It's one of the sportiest driving electric vehicles that you can buy. It almost feels like a baby Taycan, of course, without all the extra power, especially on this rear-wheel drive model. The styling of this vehicle also continues to turn heads. You do make a little bit of compromises in terms of cabin space. It's not quite as roomy as even the Hyundai Ioniq 5, but what you get back is the handling. The suspension is tuned really well. It also delivers a good ride quality. The steering is also quick, sharp, and responsive. And this car hides its weight really well. It just really likes to enjoy getting sideways and going through corners on twisty back roads. It's really what makes this car super fun, and it gets me super excited to drive the EV6 GT, the full GT version. Remember, this is just the GT line, which is more of an appearance package. Now, there are a couple of quibbles that I have with the car. I do think that the heat pump should be included even with the rear-wheel drive version, because some of you out there may want to just go for rear-wheel drive and you don't need the all-wheel drive. You want to save that money. I think the Kia should have already just included it. I also think the heated steering wheel should also be available as an option. I understand why they're going to pair it with all-wheel drive, but some people may not want that feature, but they do want the heated wheel. I also think that the stereo system in this car, the 14 speaker Meridian sound system, needs work. For some reason, my tester here just didn't sound as bass heavy as I liked, and there are definitely better sound systems in its competitors. Remember, this is an electric car. When you turn off all of the synthetic sounds that it makes, you're going to be wanting to listen to a good stereo, and that's something that I think Kia needs to address. I also didn't really particularly love the one in the Hyundai all that much either, so perhaps the Genesis GV60 will have that better lexicon sound system that'll kind of address a couple of my concerns. And I also think the last thing Kia needs to add, and Hyundai, is wireless CarPlay and Android Auto. That's something that I don't understand why they don't have, especially when this car already has a crazy amount of tech. But if you can get past all of that and you want to purchase this vehicle, what's it going to start at? Well, the base light version of this car with a smaller battery pack and 230 miles of range, that costs around $40,900. Add about $5,000 if you guys want the longer range battery and the extra power for the wind version. Now, if you want all-wheel drive, it's an extra $4,700 for all-wheel drive. This GT line with rear-wheel drive that I'm showing you now starts at $51,200. Now, over $50,000 may sound like a lot for a Kia, but remember, electric vehicles aren't cheap, but the beauty about this car is it does come, or it is available, of course, with the $7,500 federal tax credit. You can still claim that as long as you do qualify, versus something you can't get on some of the competitors that have already sold too many EVs. Keep in mind that if you guys want all-wheel drive and the GT line, the most expensive version right now is the first edition model, which is around $58,000, $59,000 with destination. This one here is about $52,000, which I actually think is pretty reasonable. Although for an extra $4,700, I may just go ahead and make that jump to the all-wheel drive version and get the extra features and the extra power. I have no idea what the pricing will be of the full GT model. I'm going to expect that car is going to be right around $60,000, perhaps $65,000 with destination and a couple options. But overall, I think the EV6 is one of the best looking EVs, one of the best driving EVs, one of the quickest charging EVs with the longest range. And as long as you can get past the slightly smaller interior space and the slightly smaller trunk, this is one of the best options out there, especially if you don't want to buy a Tesla. But with all that said, hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on the brand new 2022 Kia EV6. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at Redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always, guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.